Jack Morrison's finger froze on the trigger. 3 men had the woman cornered against the pine, and she was bleeding bad. Real bad. Her dark hair spilled over buckskin torn at the shoulder, revealing curves that shouldn't matter when death was this close. But they did. The way she gripped that bone-handled knife, ready to fight even with her strength failing, that mattered too. Just walk away, Morrison, he told himself. Same thing he'd been telling himself for 6 years, ever since Little Bighorn. Same thing that kept him alive when better men died. But this woman wasn't begging, wasn't crying. Even with blood seeping through her fingers where they pressed against her side, she stood tall, proud, like she'd rather die fighting than live on her knees. The wind shifted, carried her scent across the clearing, sage and smoke and something else, something that made his damaged leg ache and his chest tight. One of the men laughed. Ugly sound. Jack's grip tightened on his Spencer rifle. Some choices they make themselves. What would you do? Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. The first shot dropped the man with the laugh, clean through the chest, just like Jack learned at Shiloh. The other 2 spun, searching for the shooter, giving the woman the opening she needed. She moved like water, like smoke. The knife left her hand and found the second man's throat before Jack could chamber another round. The third man, smart enough to be afraid, raised his hands and backed away. Your choice, Jack called from the tree line, rifle still aimed. Walk or join your friends. The man walked. Fast. Jack waited until the footsteps faded before approaching. The woman had slumped against the pine, one hand pressed to her wounded side, the other still ready to grab the knife from the dead man's throat. Blood darkened the snow beneath her boots. Up close, she was even more dangerous. High cheekbones and full lips, but it was her eyes that stopped him cold. Dark as Montana winter, and just as unforgiving. She was studying him the same way he studied her, looking for weakness, for threat, for truth. You're hurt bad, he said. I'll live. Her English carried the soft edges of another language. Blackfoot, maybe, or Crow. Maybe, maybe not. Jack kept his distance, rifle lowered, but ready. Those men, they'll be back. With friends. She tried to push herself upright, gasped, and nearly fell. Jack caught her arm without thinking. Her skin was warm despite the cold, and when she looked up at him, grateful and furious at the same time, something shifted in his chest. My cabin's close, he said. You can rest there. Why? The question cut through the winter air. Why help me? Jack looked at the dead men in the snow, at the blood on her buckskin dress, at the way she held herself like a queen, even when she was dying. Because some things are worth doing right. Her name was Ayanna Crowfeather, half Blackfoot, half Scottish, daughter of a fur, trader who'd loved a chief's sister and paid for it with his life, widow of a war chief who'd died coughing blood instead of fighting enemies. Jack learned all this while cleaning her wound by firelight, her dress pulled down to reveal smooth brown skin, marred by the knife slash. The cut was deep, but clean. She'd be scarred, but she'd live. Her breath hitched when he pressed the bandage tight. Careful, she whispered, and Jack wasn't sure if she meant the wound or something else entirely. You're safe here, he said, though they both knew safe was relative in Montana winter. Safe? She tested the word like unfamiliar food. I haven't been safe since... She stopped, looked away. Since your husband died? Her laugh was bitter. Since I failed to give him sons. Since the tribe decided I brought bad medicine. Her hand moved unconsciously to her belly, a protective gesture Jack recognized but didn't understand. Not yet. The fire crackled between them. Outside, wind howled through the pines, but inside Jack's cabin felt warm, intimate, dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with outlaws or winter storms. "They cast you out?" Jack asked. "3 days ago. In the snow. With nothing." Ayanna's eyes found his across the flames. "Those men found me this morning. Said they had plans." Jack's jaw tightened. He'd seen those plans before in the war. Knew what desperate men did to vulnerable women. "You killed 2 of them," he said. "Good." Something flickered in her expression. Surprise, maybe approval. Most white men wouldn't appreciate a woman's capacity for violence. But Jack Morrison wasn't most white men. "You fought at Little Bighorn." It wasn't a question. Jack's blood chilled. "How did you? The way you move, the way you kill. Clean and quick, no anger. Soldiers' training." She leaned forward, firelight dancing across her face. "My husband fought there too. Came back changed." "We all came back changed." Jack's voice was rough. "Those who came back at all." "What changed you?" The question hung between them like smoke. Jack could have deflected, could have kept his secrets buried where they belonged. Instead, he found himself talking. "Shot a boy. Couldn't have been more than 16. He wasn't even armed, just trying to drag a wounded warrior to safety." Jack stared into the fire. "I panicked. Put a bullet through his spine." Ayanna was quiet for a long moment. Then, "War makes killers of us all. Some of us, more than others." She reached across the space between them, fingers brushing his scarred knuckles. "But not all killers are evil men." The touch lasted only seconds, but it burned through Jack like whiskey. When she pulled away, he could still feel the ghost of her skin against his. Outside, something howled in the distance. Wolf, maybe, or something worse. Jack woke to the sound of breaking glass. The surviving outlaw had returned with 5 friends, just like Jack predicted. They surrounded the cabin in the pre-dawn darkness, their voices carrying clearly through the thin walls. "We know you got her in there, Morrison. Send out the squaw, and we'll let you live." Jack rolled from his bedroll, reached for his rifle. Beside the fireplace, Ayanna was already awake, her knife in hand. In the dim light, her face was calm. "Ready." "How many?" she whispered. 6, maybe 7. Jack checked his ammunition. 18 rounds in the Spencer, 6 in his Colt. Not enough for a prolonged fight. "There's a root cellar behind the cabin. You could—" "No." Her voice cut through his words. "We fight together, or we die together." Something twisted in Jack's chest. When was the last time someone chose to stand with him instead of running? When was the last time someone looked at him like Ayanna was looking at him now? Like he was worth dying beside? "Can you shoot?" he asked. In answer, she picked up his spare rifle, checked the mechanism with practiced hands. "My father taught me. Before the tribe killed him for loving my mother." The first shot shattered Jack's window. Glass exploded inward, glittering like stars in the firelight. Jack returned fire, his bullet finding its target in the darkness outside. A man screamed, then silence. "5 left," Ayanna said calmly, taking position at the second window. They fought like they'd been partners for years instead of hours. When Jack reloaded, Ayanna covered him. When she shifted position, he laid down covering fire. The outlaws tried to rush the cabin twice, and twice they were driven back by accurate shooting and stubborn courage. But ammunition doesn't last forever. Jack's rifle clicked empty just as the door exploded inward. 2 men burst through, guns drawn, and for a heartbeat, Jack thought it was over. Then Ayanna moved. Her knife took the first man in the chest, angled up beneath the ribs to find the heart. The second man swung his gun toward her, and Jack threw himself forward, his wooden leg buckling under the impact. They went down together, rolling across the floor in a tangle of limbs and desperation. The outlaw was younger, stronger, but Jack had been fighting longer. His hands found the man's throat, squeezed until the struggles stopped. When the silence finally came, it felt deafening. Jack pushed himself upright, his leg screaming in pain. Ayanna knelt beside the fireplace, blood on her dress, not hers this time. Her eyes were wild, pupils dilated with the aftermath of violence. "Is it over?" she asked. Jack limped to the broken window, peered into the gray dawn. 3 bodies lay motionless in the snow. No movement in the tree line. No sounds except wind and the distant call of ravens. "It's over." They stared at each other across the cabin wreckage. Ayanna's hair had come loose from its braid, falling in dark waves around her shoulders. Her buckskin dress was torn again, revealing the smooth line of her collarbone, the swell of her breasts beneath the thin leather. Jack felt desire hit him like a physical blow, raw and unexpected and entirely inappropriate given the circumstances. But Ayanna's eyes had darkened too, and when she stood, her movements were fluid, hypnotic. "We're alive," she said, and the words carried weight beyond their simple meaning. "Yeah." Jack's voice was rough. "We are." She crossed the distance between them, slowly, deliberately. When she reached him, she placed her palm flat against his chest, directly over his racing heart. "I thought I would die today," she whispered. "You didn't. Because of you." Her thumb traced the edge of his shirt, a touch that set his skin on fire. "Because you chose to fight for me." Jack caught her wrist, but didn't pull her hand away. "Ayanna, do you want me?" The question was direct, honest, devastating in its simplicity. Jack's answer caught in his throat. Of course he wanted her. Had wanted her since the moment he saw her standing proud, despite her wounds. But wanting and taking were different things, and he had already taken too much from too many people. "It's not about wanting," he managed. "Then what?" He could have listed all the reasons, the danger, the differences between them, his own damaged soul that had no business touching something as pure as her courage. Instead, he found himself saying the only truth that mattered. "I don't deserve you." Ayanna smiled then, the first real smile he'd seen from her. It transformed her face, made her beautiful in a way that stole his breath. "Good thing I'm not asking what you deserve." She rose on her toes, lips brushing his ear. "I'm asking what you want." When she kissed him, Jack's careful control finally shattered. They made love with the desperation of people who'd glimpsed death and chosen life instead. Jack's hands shook as he unlaced her buckskin dress, revealing skin like warm honey in the firelight. Ayanna's fingers were sure and seeking as she stripped away his shirt, her palms mapping the scars across his chest, bullet wounds and blade marks, and the deep groove where shrapnel had nearly taken his heart at Antietam. "So many battles," she whispered, lips trailing across his collarbone. "Too many." Jack caught her face in his hands, studied the elegant curve of her cheekbones, the way her dark eyes reflected the flames. "What about you? What battles have you fought?" In answer, she guided his hand to her belly. The gesture was tender, protective, and suddenly Jack understood the secret she'd been carrying. "You're with child." 3 months. Her voice was barely audible. "My husband's child. The one the tribe said I could never give him." Jack's hand stilled. "They cast you out while you were pregnant?" "They said the child would be cursed. Born of a woman who brought death." Ayanna's eyes filled with tears she refused to shed. "Maybe they were right. Maybe I do bring death wherever I go." "No." Jack's voice was fierce. "You bring life. You fought beside me today. Saved my life. That's not death. That's strength. When he kissed her again, it was with reverence, with a tenderness he'd forgotten he possessed. They moved together slowly, carefully, acutely aware of the life she carried. Jack worshipped her body with hands and lips, and whispered promises, and when she arched beneath him, gasping his name like a prayer, he felt something break open in his chest. Afterward, they lay tangled in his bedroll beside the dying fire, her head pillowed on his shoulder, his fingers combing through her long hair. "What happens now?" Ayanna asked. Jack considered the question. The smart thing would be to take her to Fort Benton, find her passage to whatever family might claim her. The safe thing would be to maintain distance, to guard his heart against another loss. But when he looked at her, beautiful and fierce, and carrying new life, despite everything that had tried to destroy her, Jack realized he was tired of being smart, tired of being safe. "Stay," he said simply. "Here? With you? If you want?" Jack's arm tightened around her. "I can't promise much. This life is hard, isolated, dangerous. But I can promise you'll never face it alone." Ayanna was quiet for so long, Jack wondered if she'd fallen asleep. Then she spoke, her voice soft against his skin. "I dreamed of you." "What?" "Before I found you in the forest. The night before the tribe cast me out. I dreamed of a scarred warrior who would save me from the snow." She lifted her head, met his eyes. I didn't know if it was prophecy or wishful thinking. Jack traced the line of her jaw with his thumb. Maybe both. They talked through the night, about her childhood following trade routes between tribes, about his farm in Ohio, before the war took everything, about names for the child, and whether spring would come early this year. Small talk, made profound by intimacy, by the miracle of finding understanding in another person's arms. As dawn broke gray and cold through the shattered window, Ayanna asked the question Jack had been dreading. "Will you tell me about the boy you killed?" Jack's body tensed, but he didn't pull away. If they were going to build something together, it had to be built on truth. His name was Running Bear. 16 years old, maybe 17. Beautiful kid, the kind of boy who should have lived to be a grandfather, should have told stories to children around winter fires. Jack's voice was steady, but Ayanna could feel the tension in his muscles. "He wasn't fighting when I shot him. He was trying to save a wounded friend, dragging him to safety. And you shot him anyway. I shot him anyway." Jack closed his eyes, saw the war paint, saw him moving, and I just reacted. By the time I realized what I'd done, he was already dying. Ayanna was quiet for a moment. Then, "Did he forgive you?" The question caught Jack off guard. "What?" "Before he died, did he look at you? Did he say anything?" Jack's throat tightened as the memory surfaced, something he'd buried so deep he'd almost convinced himself it hadn't happened. "He did look at me. Right at the end. And he smiled. Just a little, like he understood." Jack's voice broke. "Like he was telling me it was all right. Then maybe it's time you told yourself it was all right too." When Ayanna kissed him this time, it tasted like absolution, like the possibility of redemption, like the promise that broken things could be made whole again. Given enough time and care and love. Outside, snow began to fall, soft and gentle, instead of the harsh blizzard that had driven them together. Inside Jack's cabin, two damaged souls held each other close and began the slow work of healing. 6 months later, Jack Morrison delivered his own child into the world. The baby came early, during the worst blizzard in memory, when the nearest doctor was 50 miles away through impassable snow. Jack's hands, the same hands that had killed at Little Bighorn, caught his daughter with infinite gentleness as she slipped into life. "She's beautiful," he whispered, wrapping the tiny girl in Ayana's wedding dress, the white cotton gown they'd ordered from the Sears catalog and married in just 2 months before, with only the mountains as witnesses. Jack placed the baby on Ayana's chest, watched as mother and daughter regarded each other with solemn recognition. "What do we call her?" "Sarah Running Bear Morrison." Ayana's fingers traced the baby's perfect features. "For the wife you lost, and the boy you found peace with." Jack's eyes filled. In that name was forgiveness, acceptance, and the promise that some wounds could heal into wisdom instead of bitterness. Spring came early that year. The snow melted in rushing streams, and wildflowers bloomed across the meadow where Jack had expanded their cabin. He built a cradle from mountain cedar. Ayana wove blankets from wool traded with passing trappers, and their daughter grew strong in the thin Montana air. On warm evenings, Jack would sit on their porch with Sarah in his arms while Ayana tended her garden. Beans and squash and corn planted in the ancient way her grandmother had taught her. Sometimes he would tell his daughter stories about her mother's courage, about the night they fought side by side, about how love could bloom even in the coldest ground if you gave it room to grow. The outlaws never returned. Word had spread that Jack Morrison was not a man to cross, especially when protecting what he loved. And what he loved, this fierce woman and their perfect child, had given him something worth protecting. In the distance, mountains caught the setting sun like promises. The future stretched ahead, uncertain but no longer lonely. Jack Morrison had finally found his way home. If this story moved you, let me know where you're listening from, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales of love and redemption from the American frontier.